"Hold on tight, baby, don't let go," whispered Sophia Reed as the train jolted sharply, her arms cradling little Ella with the urgency of a mother protecting a fragile world. The morning light slanted through the large panoramic windows of the commuter train, cutting across the polished brass handrails and gleaming leather seats, casting a golden glow on the bustling crowd of suited professionals clutching briefcases and coffee cups, their murmured conversations blending into a low hum that filled the cabin. Sophia's eyes were heavy from an overnight shift at the hospital, and her body ached with exhaustion, but she kept her focus locked on Ella, who nestled against her chest, eyes fluttering in and out of sleep. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks echoed through the compartment like a heartbeat, amplifying the tension as the train swayed around a bend, causing Sophia to clutch the safety strap above her with one hand while holding her daughter with the other. Around her, passengers shifted in their seats, a few glancing at the young mother with subtle judgment, some offering faint smiles of sympathy, while others whispered softly to their neighbors, their eyes briefly scanning the frazzled hair and worn jacket, noting the tiredness etched on her face. Amid the crowd, seated across the aisle, James Montgomery, a man whose presence seemed to command attention even in the anonymity of public transit, watched quietly from behind silver-rimmed glasses, his tailored navy suit crisp and immaculate, his hand resting casually on the polished leather briefcase beside him. He had been reviewing notes on a new investment opportunity on his tablet, but the gentle sway of the train and the subtle movements of the young mother with her child drew his attention like a magnet. He observed the small, precise gestures, the way Sophia adjusted the blanket over Ella's tiny shoulders, the careful way she cradled her daughter's head against her chest, the soft hum she whispered under her breath to soothe her. The contrast between the hectic urgency of the commuters around them and the delicate cocoon of care Sophia created for Ella made James lean back slightly. Curiosity piqued and admiration quietly stirring in his chest. Sophia felt the train lurch again, and for a split second, her grip faltered. Ella stirred, tiny fingers brushing against the edge of the seat, eyes wide and unknowing. The brief glance upward revealed the track of James's gaze, calm but intensely attentive, as if he could measure every micro-motion and recognize the immense responsibility carried in her small frame. The scent of freshly brewed coffee from the cafe cart mingled with the faint aroma of polished leather, adding a richness to the air that seemed almost cinematic, and Sophia, unaware of the observer, whispered softly, "Just breathe, Ella, we're almost there," her voice a fragile thread of reassurance in a world that felt suddenly larger and more complicated. Every subtle detail, the shimmer of sunlight on her daughter's pale hair, the muted click of high heels against the aisle floor, the quiet rustle of paper and murmured instructions from the conductors, layered the scene with texture, heightening the anticipation for what might come next on this ordinary morning turned momentous. The train continued its journey, the city sprawling outside like a miniature diorama, buildings gleaming with reflective glass and the occasional flutter of pedestrians rushing along sidewalks, unaware of the quiet struggle within the carriage. And through it all, Sophia held Ella close, a tiny miracle suspended in time, while James Montgomery's watchful gaze lingered on the mother and child, a spark of something extraordinary beginning to take shape as he silently calculated how a single moment of care, a simple act of attention, could ripple outward, changing the course of two lives in ways no one aboard the train could yet imagine. The train continued its steady hum along the tracks, the sunlight shifting as the cityscape gave way to tree-lined suburbs and the occasional glimpse of a river sparkling in the morning light. The cabin was filled with a soft, warm glow, highlighting the polished wooden handrails and the subtle pattern of the upholstery on the seats. Sophia Reed shifted slightly, adjusting the blanket over Ella Reed, whose tiny eyelids fluttered. In the delicate dance between sleep and wakefulness, the air smelled faintly of leather, coffee, and the subtle hint of morning dew carried through the open vents, blending with the soft murmur of passengers settling into their routines. Every few seconds, the gentle clatter of the wheels against the steel tracks created a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat echoing through the carriage. James Montgomery continued to watch, his posture relaxed but his eyes attentive, noticing the precise, careful movements of the young mother. He observed how Sophia straightened Ella's tiny socks with a tenderness that belied her exhaustion, how she traced a light finger along the curve of her daughter's cheek, a silent promise of protection and care. Around them, the other commuters moved with a mechanical efficiency, some typing on laptops, others scrolling through devices, yet the subtle contrast between their brisk, purposeful gestures and Sophia's gentle, measured motions created a distinct layer of focus that drew James even closer to the unfolding scene. The light from the windows caught on the delicate strands of Ella's pale hair, making them shimmer against the soft cotton of her blanket, and James noticed the quiet determination in Sophia's gaze, a resolve that refused to be broken despite the weight of fatigue pressing on her shoulders. A mother's instinct was in every careful motion, from the way she held Ella's hand to the way she subtly leaned forward as the train negotiated a slight curve in the tracks. James felt a quiet admiration grow within him, an appreciation for the silent strength he could see in her actions, an elegance that did not need the adornment of wealth or status to be evident. He glanced down briefly at his polished leather shoes before returning his focus, noticing how the simple blue dress Sophia wore was slightly faded from repeated washes, yet maintained a quiet dignity, a testament to her perseverance. The soft murmur of a nearby passenger discussing business barely registered as the gentle rustle of paper and the faint hiss of the heating vents filled the space with background texture. Outside, the city stretched past in a blur of concrete, glass, and greenery, the urban landscape giving way to the gentle rise and fall of suburban rooftops and leafy avenues. Within the cabin, James continued to calculate the subtle probabilities, the minute adjustments Sophia made to keep her daughter safe, and the rhythm of care in which she moved, a choreography of concern and affection. Every gesture was deliberate, almost instinctive, reflecting the depth of maternal devotion in a world that moved too quickly for many to notice. He imagined the small stories behind each action, the late nights, the endless worry, the quiet sacrifices that Sophia had made to keep Ella safe and warm. As the train glided toward the next station, the subtle interplay of light, movement, and human connection created a tableau that seemed almost suspended in time. The air itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, as if acknowledging the significance of this ordinary yet extraordinary scene unfolding within the carriage. Sophia adjusted the strap of her bag and shifted Ella slightly, smoothing the folds of the blanket, and for a moment, the entire world outside faded into a soft blur. James Montgomery's eyes followed every movement with a heightened awareness, the soft creak of the seats, the muted murmur of conversations, the occasional metallic click of the train doors, all of it forming a symphony of observation around the quiet intimacy of mother and child. In that suspended, cinematic space, the subtle glow of morning light, the soft scent of coffee and polished leather, the rhythm of the train, and the deliberate, gentle care of Sophia Reed for her daughter created a scene that held the promise of something remarkable about to unfold. Sophia Reed shifted slightly in her seat, her gaze flicking toward the large window as the train sped past rows of brick townhouses and glimmering storefronts bathed in the soft morning light, the rhythmic motion of the carriage creating a gentle sway that mirrored the rising and falling of her own heartbeat. She could feel Ella Reed stir in her arms, a tiny stretch and a yawn that revealed the delicate curve of her mouth and the soft curve of her cheeks, and Sophia instinctively adjusted the blanket around her daughter, tucking it carefully beneath the small shoulders to shield her from the faint draft that slipped through the slightly cracked window. Around them, the other passengers moved with a quiet efficiency, some engrossed in their morning routines, others exchanging muted greetings, yet none seemed aware of the tiny drama unfolding in the corner of the cabin, where a young mother and her child maintained a fragile bubble of calm amid the ebb and flow of urban commuters. James Montgomery continued to observe from across the aisle, his attention unwavering, noting the subtle interplay of concentration and care in Sophia's gestures, the precise way she held Ella's hand, the gentle tilt of her head to keep the child balanced, the soft hum she whispered under her breath, a melody of comfort that seemed almost sacred in the ordinary space of the train carriage. The light through the windows shifted again, now illuminating the brass fittings and polished wooden armrests with a warm, honeyed glow, casting elongated shadows across the aisle that danced softly against the patterned carpet. James noticed how Sophia's eyes, though heavy with fatigue, remained vigilant, scanning the compartment, adjusting the angle of her body to shield Ella from the occasional nudge of a passing passenger, a small, unspoken choreography of protection and care that spoke volumes about her resolve. He could almost measure the quiet strength in her frame, the resilience honed from long nights and early mornings, the silent promise to her daughter that she would be safe, come what may. The faint aroma of roasted coffee beans from a nearby cup mingled with the subtle scent of leather and polished metal, creating a sensory backdrop that accentuated the contrast between the bustling life of the train and the intimate, deliberate world Sophia had created around her child. Every detail of her movements conveyed intention, the way she smoothed a stray lock of hair from Ella's forehead, the careful adjustment of a tiny mitten to ensure warmth, the soft shift of her body to maintain balance as the train negotiated a curve. The other passengers, unaware, continued their own routines, the distant chatter blending with the muted whir of the heating system and the occasional click of a phone, providing a gentle ambient soundtrack that framed the scene with realism and texture. James's eyes lingered on the quiet courage evident in Sophia's posture, the measured way she breathed to synchronize with Ella's gentle movements, the subtle micro-adjustments that kept her daughter secure, and he felt a growing sense of admiration for the understated heroism of the mother before him. He imagined the countless moments of vigilance and care that had brought them to this train, the unseen labor and sacrifices that went unnoticed by the world but were written clearly in the rhythm of her actions, and in that moment, the ordinary carriage of the morning commute transformed into a stage for quiet resilience and the unfolding of a small, yet profound story of devotion and attention. The light outside deepened into a soft amber as the train curved over a small bridge, reflecting off the polished surfaces inside the cabin, and Sophia Reed, holding Ella close, created a pocket of safety and warmth that seemed impervious to the motion and distractions around them, a cocoon of tenderness in the heart of the bustling city. James Montgomery continued to watch, an unspoken recognition passing through his thoughtful gaze, understanding that what he observed was not merely care but a form of extraordinary commitment, a quiet display of love that transcended the ordinary rhythms of the world around them, marking the beginning of an encounter that promised to unfold into something both remarkable and transformative. Sophia Reed shifted in her seat, her eyes flicking toward Ella as the child stirred slightly, the gentle rhythm of her breathing matching the subtle sway of the train, a tender harmony of motion and care. The sunlight had deepened to a warm golden hue, casting long shadows across the polished wooden handrails and the leather of the passenger seats, highlighting the contrast between the bustling activity of the cabin and the quiet, deliberate world Sophia had created around her daughter. James Montgomery observed from across the aisle, his gaze steady and thoughtful, noting the careful way Sophia adjusted the blanket to cover Ella's tiny shoulders and how she cradled her head with precision, as if every motion was a silent promise of protection. The subtle scent of coffee from a passenger's thermos mingled with the faint aroma of polished leather, adding a richness to the ambient sounds of murmured conversations, shuffling feet, and the gentle hum of the train. Sophia's fingers traced the edge of the blanket, smoothing wrinkles and ensuring that Ella remained comfortable and secure, her touch deliberate and soothing. James's attention remained fixed, appreciating the quiet determination in Sophia's posture, the way she leaned slightly to shield her daughter from the occasional bump of a passing passenger, a protective instinct that spoke to a depth of care and attentiveness beyond the ordinary. The train's motion created a gentle rocking sensation that made the subtle adjustments Sophia made all the more precise, and James could sense the weight of responsibility she carried in each small, careful movement. The other passengers seemed oblivious to the nuances of her actions, absorbed in their own routines, yet the scene of mother and child radiated a calm intensity, a silent story unfolding in the midst of ordinary life. Sophia whispered softly to Ella, a low hum of reassurance that blended seamlessly with the gentle creaking of the seats and the distant clatter of the wheels against the tracks. James Montgomery felt a quiet admiration for the resilience and strength that emanated from Sophia, the understated courage of a woman balancing exhaustion, vigilance, and love with a grace that demanded no attention but deserved profound respect. The subtle interplay of light and shadow, the texture of the train interior, the soft ambient sounds, and the deliberate, loving care of Sophia for Ella created a tableau that felt intimate, cinematic, and deeply human, a scene where the ordinary converged with the extraordinary in the quiet power of maternal devotion. As the train continued toward its next station, the cityscape outside shifting from dense urban blocks to quiet suburban streets, the gentle motion of the carriage and the unspoken connection between observer and mother created a tension of anticipation, a sense that a significant moment was approaching, shaped by the delicate balance of care, attention, and silent observation. Sophia Reed shifted again, glancing toward the aisle as the train entered a tunnel, the muted light creating a soft chiaroscuro across the cabin, highlighting the subtle textures of the upholstery, the polished brass handles, and the gentle folds of the blanket around little Ella Reed. The child stirred lightly, her tiny fingers curling instinctively around Sophia's wrist as if drawing reassurance from the warmth of her mother's touch. The rhythm of the train, the gentle clatter of the wheels against the steel rails, and the occasional murmur of passengers moving to and from the doors created a symphony of background sound that framed the delicate tension of the moment. Sophia adjusted her position, shifting slightly to prevent Ella from leaning too far against the edge of the seat, her eye scanning the space with quiet vigilance, a mother's instinct guiding every movement. Across the aisle, James Montgomery continued to watch, his gaze attentive yet unobtrusive, noting the fine details, the subtle tilt of Sophia's head as she hummed softly to her daughter, the precise way she tucked the blanket under Ella's chin, the careful micro-adjustments that ensured the child remained both safe and comfortable amid the motion of the train. The sunlight returned, filtering through the windows as the train emerged from the tunnel, casting a warm glow on the rows of commuters who remained largely unaware of the careful choreography unfolding nearby. Sophia's movements were measured, each gesture a testament to her awareness of both the physical environment and the emotional needs of her child, a balance of vigilance and tenderness that seemed effortless yet carried the weight of countless small sacrifices. The faint aroma of coffee and the subtle scent of polished leather mingled with the ambient sounds of footsteps and quiet conversations, enhancing the sensory depth of the scene and emphasizing the contrast between the bustling activity of the passengers and the serene focus of mother and child. James noted how Sophia's eyes, despite fatigue, held a sharp attentiveness, following Ella's every twitch and shift, responding immediately to the subtlest signals of discomfort or awakening. The soft hum of her voice, a gentle melody that blended with the ambient noise of the carriage, seemed to weave a protective cocoon around the child, a quiet rhythm that echoed the constant vigilance of her parent. The other passengers continued their routines, typing on laptops, scrolling through devices, reading, and adjusting briefcases and handbags, yet the presence of Sophia and Ella created a focal point of quiet intensity, a microcosm of care and attentiveness in the midst of ordinary morning travel. James Montgomery's mind catalogued the scene with precision, the relaxed posture of the seated passengers contrasted with the subtle tension in Sophia's shoulders, the careful positioning of Ella's head, the deliberate smoothing of the blanket, and the soft, almost imperceptible sway of the mother's body as she responded to the train's motion. He could sense the unspoken narrative of dedication, perseverance, and love that permeated every gesture, a story told without words but communicated through the precision and attentiveness of action. The train rolled past a series of city blocks, sunlight catching on glass storefronts and casting reflections onto the polished floors of the carriage, while Sophia's focus remained unwavering, every shift and adjustment guided by instinct and experience, a dance of care that held Ella steady and safe. James found himself drawn into the rhythm, his awareness heightened by the subtle cues and the interplay of light and motion, the careful balancing act that Sophia performed with grace under pressure. Each second that passed built a sense of anticipation, the quiet tension and steadfast devotion radiating from the mother and child creating an almost cinematic tableau that held the promise of a moment poised on the brink of something extraordinary, where the ordinary commute became the stage for an unfolding story of vigilance, connection, and the understated heroism of everyday love. Sophia Reed's attention was unwavering as the train gently swayed along the tracks, her arms cradling Ella with precise care, adjusting the soft cotton blanket around her tiny shoulders and ensuring that her head rested securely against her chest. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the polished brass fittings and reflecting off the smooth leather of the seats, casting a golden hue across the cabin that softened the bustle of the passengers. The gentle hum of conversation, the clinking of coffee cups, and the faint shuffle of briefcases created a rhythmic backdrop, yet within this orchestral normalcy, Sophia's world centered entirely on her daughter. Ella stirred, a tiny murmur escaping her lips, prompting Sophia to tilt slightly, smoothing a stray lock of blonde hair from her forehead and humming a low, comforting tune that seemed to ripple through the air, drawing a subtle hush from nearby passengers as the soft melody mingled with the ambient sounds of the train. Across the aisle, James Montgomery's gaze remained fixed, his posture relaxed but his mind fully engaged, cataloguing the details of Sophia's movements, the careful positioning of Ella, the slight tension in her shoulders as she braced against the gentle lurches of the carriage, the soft pressure of her hand supporting the child's back. He noticed the way her eyes darted subtly to the other passengers, assessing their proximity and adjusting her body to maintain a protective buffer, and the faint rise and fall of her chest as she breathed steadily, a silent rhythm of vigilance and care. The subtle aroma of freshly brewed coffee from a nearby thermos mingled with the polished leather and the faint scent of the morning air, adding layers of sensory depth to the cabin, heightening James's awareness of every motion, every nuance of Sophia's interaction with Ella. Her movements, though quiet and deliberate, conveyed a narrative of strength and endurance, a story of countless sleepless nights and unwavering dedication made tangible through each careful adjustment, each whispered reassurance. The train's motion created a gentle sway that Sophia countered with micro-adjustments, tilting her body just enough to ensure Ella remained perfectly balanced, every small gesture a testament to the instinctive devotion of a mother. James's eyes traced the lines of concentration on her face, the soft shadows that danced across her features as the sunlight shifted with the train's movement, and he felt a quiet admiration build, a recognition of the unspoken heroism inherent in her actions. The passengers around them continued their routines, oblivious to the quiet intensity in the corner of the carriage, yet the interaction between mother and child radiated a calm authority that seemed to influence the atmosphere, compelling attention even in its subtlety. Each movement, each adjustment Sophia made, was a deliberate expression of protection and reassurance, creating a small world within the cabin where nothing could disturb the fragile sense of safety she provided. James Montgomery felt a pull of empathy, a desire to ensure that the careful balance of this moment was preserved, and he observed the subtle cues, the gentle tilt of the blanket, the precise placement of a tiny hand, the soft cadence of a hum, that defined the extraordinary care Sophia took to shield her child from even the slightest discomfort. The soft golden light bathed the cabin in warmth as the train curved along the tracks, the buildings outside casting elongated reflections across the polished floors, and within the moving carriage, a delicate narrative of attentiveness, love, and quiet resilience continued to unfold, each second building anticipation, each gesture layering meaning, and each breath taken by mother and child resonating through the space with understated significance. A prelude to the moment when observation and action would converge in a way that promised to leave an indelible mark on both their lives. Sophia Reed's grip tightened slightly around Ella Reed as the train rounded a sharp bend, the gentle sway transforming into a more pronounced lurch, sending a ripple of unease through the cabin. The warm morning light outside glinted off the glass buildings of the city, casting reflections that danced across the polished wood and brass inside, highlighting the intricate details of the upholstery and the gleaming metal edges of the handrails. Sophia adjusted her hold, bringing Ella closer to her chest, humming a soft, steady tune that seemed to settle the air, a subtle melody that threaded through the ambient sounds of murmured conversations and the quiet rustle of paper and briefcases. James Montgomery's eyes followed every motion with a careful attentiveness, noting the precision in which Sophia shifted the blanket over her daughter, the way her fingers smoothed out wrinkles and ensured that no part of Ella was exposed to the draft seeping through the slightly cracked window. The passengers around them continued their routines, absorbed in their own worlds, yet the scene of mother and child emanated a quiet gravity, a focal point of concentrated care amid the ebb and flow of the train. James observed how Sophia's eyes scanned the compartment with a blend of vigilance and calm, every glance measuring distance and movement, every subtle adjustment a reflection of the countless nights spent balancing exhaustion with responsibility. The aroma of coffee and subtle hints of leather lingered in the air, mingling with the warm sunlight to create a sensory depth that made the ordinary cabin feel almost cinematic. Sophia's breathing was measured, her chest rising and falling in tandem with the gentle sway of the carriage, and James noticed the delicate tension in her shoulders, the careful positioning of her hands and arms, all contributing to a silent choreography of protection and attentiveness. Ella stirred again, tiny fingers brushing against the edge of the seat, prompting Sophia to tilt her head and whisper soothing words, the soft cadence of her voice blending seamlessly with the low murmur of the other passengers. James's gaze lingered on the way Sophia balanced her own fatigue with the responsibility of safeguarding her child, the subtle interplay of motion, light, and sound creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation. The city outside blurred past, a tapestry of glass, concrete, and greenery, while the cabin itself became a contained world of quiet intensity, the ordinary rhythm of the morning commute heightened by the presence of concentrated care and unwavering focus. Sophia's fingers traced along the edge of Ella's tiny hand, ensuring warmth and comfort, and she hummed softly, a protective ritual that seemed to suspend time, drawing James further into the narrative of quiet resilience and maternal devotion. The gentle sway of the train, the muted footsteps of the passengers, and the shifting sunlight played across the scene like a symphony, every note emphasizing the extraordinary patience and attentiveness of Sophia as she navigated the subtle hazards of movement and distraction. James Montgomery's mind catalogued each detail, each micro-adjustment, and the quiet determination emanating from Sophia, realizing that in the ordinary space of the train cabin, an extraordinary moment of vigilance and love was unfolding. The soft warmth of sunlight touched the folds of Ella's blanket, the sheen of the polished leather of the seats catching the light just enough to frame the mother and child in a natural spotlight, and James's anticipation grew, sensing that the delicate tension and layered care in this scene were on the verge of converging into a defining moment that would leave a lasting impression on all who observed it. Sophia Reed's arms tightened instinctively around Ella Reed as the train slowed, approaching the next station with a soft rhythmic clatter that resonated through the cabin. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows in golden streams, catching on the polished brass fittings and reflecting off the worn leather of the seats, illuminating the small details of the mother and child in a warm, intimate glow. Sophia adjusted the blanket around Ella's tiny shoulders once more, smoothing it with delicate fingers, and whispered softly, a gentle hum blending seamlessly with the ambient sounds of the murmuring passengers and the soft hiss of the brakes. James Montgomery leaned slightly forward in his seat, his eyes attentive and steady, absorbing every subtle movement, the careful tilt of Sophia's head, the precise adjustment of Ella's position, the soft rhythm of the mother's breathing matching that of her child, creating a small sanctuary of care amid the flowing motion of the train. Around them, commuters shifted and moved, some boarding and some preparing to disembark, yet the quiet focus of Sophia enveloped her daughter like a protective bubble, drawing James's gaze with an almost magnetic pull. He observed the way she balanced her exhaustion with vigilance, how she responded instantly to every slight movement or murmur from Ella, her instincts honed through countless nights and moments of careful attention. The faint aroma of brewed coffee mingled with the subtle scent of leather and polished wood, a sensory backdrop that framed the intensity and tenderness of the scene without overwhelming it. Sophia's soft hum rose slightly as Ella let out a tiny sigh, stretching her small arms and settling back comfortably against her mother, and James felt a quiet awe at the seamless synchronization of mother and child, a rhythm of safety and trust established without words. The train lurched gently as it navigated a curve, and Sophia's hands moved with delicate precision, ensuring Ella remained secure, adjusting the folds of the blanket and shifting her own body just enough to absorb the motion, a dance of protection that James recognized as both instinctive and extraordinary. The cabin around them carried on with its usual morning energy, yet a subtle hush seemed to settle over the aisle near Sophia, the intensity of her care radiating outward in small, almost imperceptible waves. Sunlight streaked across James's face, catching the silver of his glasses and reflecting softly off the polished surfaces around the train, highlighting the contrast between the hectic routine of the commute and the intimate focus of the mother and child. Sophia's eyes briefly met his in a fleeting, almost unconscious acknowledgement, her gaze soft yet strong, carrying a depth of care that required no explanation, and James found himself moved by the quiet heroism before him. As the train slowed to a near stop, the gentle click of the doors opening and the murmur of passengers preparing to disembark framed the final moments of this small but profound tableau. Every gesture Sophia made, from the smooth adjustment of Ella's blanket to the soft murmur of reassurance, conveyed a narrative of protection, devotion, and attentive love that resonated with clarity, creating a perfect harmony between ordinary motion and extraordinary care, a scene that James Montgomery absorbed fully, recognizing that the quiet vigilance of one devoted mother could transform an ordinary morning into a moment of profound human connection. Sophia Reed exhaled softly as the train came to a gentle stop, the doors sliding open with a muted hiss and the sound of footsteps on the platform creating a backdrop of anticipation and transition. The sunlight poured through the windows, warming the polished wooden surfaces and casting a golden glow on the careful folds of Ella Reed's blanket, highlighting the soft curve of her cheek and the delicate rise and fall of her tiny chest. Sophia adjusted her hold slightly, ensuring that Ella remained secure as the movement of passengers and the opening doors created a ripple of subtle motion through the cabin. James Montgomery rose from his seat with a composed calm, his eyes still following the mother and child as they prepared to move toward the exit, the quiet attentiveness in his gaze reflecting both admiration and understanding of the unseen weight Sophia bore. Around them, the commuters continued their flow, some stepping onto the platform, others waiting for their turn, yet the moment between mother and daughter remained insulated, a private sphere of care and focus that seemed to slow the passage of time. Sophia's soft hum continued, barely audible, as she shifted Ella slightly to offer better support, the gentle melody threading through the ambient sounds of the train and platform, creating a subtle harmony that seemed to resonate with the significance of the day. James Montgomery approached quietly, offering a measured smile and a nod of acknowledgement, his presence calm yet authoritative, a silent recognition of the quiet resilience and devotion that Sophia had demonstrated throughout the journey. The soft click of polished shoes on the platform and the faint murmur of passengers' voices provided a gentle cadence as Sophia and Ella prepared to step from the train, the sunlight catching on James's tailored navy suit and reflecting off the metallic edges of the handrails, creating a tableau of light, movement, and human connection. Every gesture Sophia made, from smoothing the blanket to adjusting her daughter's position, spoke of intention, vigilance, and unspoken courage, a choreography of care that had held steady through the sway of the carriage and the minor turbulence of the journey. James's gaze lingered on the small details, the way Sophia's fingers traced along Ella's arm, the soft tilt of her head as she whispered reassurance, the measured steps she took to maintain balance and security as she navigated the exit. The surrounding passengers, absorbed in their own routines, seemed unaware of the layers of devotion, protection, and attentiveness unfolding in their midst, yet the energy of care radiated outward, touching even the peripheral awareness of those nearby. The morning sun now fully illuminated the platform, casting long shadows and highlighting the richness of textures, the polished brass, the smooth wood, the soft fabrics of the blanket and clothing, all converging to frame the small, extraordinary interaction between mother and child. As Sophia took a final, careful step onto the platform, her eyes met James Montgomery's again, a fleeting moment of recognition and mutual understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of effort, empathy, and quiet heroism. The train doors slid closed behind them, the gentle rush of air carrying away the faint aroma of coffee and the lingering warmth of the carriage, leaving a tableau of resolution and human connection, where vigilance, care, and empathy had transformed an ordinary morning commute into a moment of profound significance, leaving an indelible impression on everyone present, and quietly reminding all who witnessed it of the extraordinary impact of quiet devotion and attentiveness.